Ragnar Lothbrok had sailed across many seas, his name whispered by the winds that touched distant shores and echoed through forests where no Viking foot had stepped before. But never had he faced a land so shrouded in mist and myth as the valley where the shadows moved like serpents beneath the moon. The night was calm, yet alive, with the strange murmurs of a place that belonged neither to Midgard nor to the 9 worlds he knew. His longship rested on the dark waters, its dragon-headed prow watching the towering mountains that glimmered faintly under starlight. Ragnar's hand gripped the haft of his axe as if the steel could sense the battle to come. The villagers he had met spoke of a beast, a warrior cloaked in the shape of a snow leopard, whose fury had shattered armies and broken masters. They called him Tai Lung. They said he was once destined to be the dragon warrior, but had fallen into darkness and hunger for power. Ragnar knew of tyrants. He had faced kings and jarls and berserkers, but this name carried a weight that was different, heavier, like a boulder hanging above a path that one must still walk. The grass hissed as he stepped ashore, his boots sinking slightly into the cold earth. He felt the air dense with ancient chi, something the seers of his homeland would have called a river of fate, running unseen beneath the soil. His shield brothers were far behind, their campfires dim on the horizon. This was his quest alone, for the stories of the East said that Tai Lung had claimed the valley and the scroll of power hidden within it. And Ragnar, son of Sigurd, sought not only to conquer, but to test his spirit against one who bent destiny with his claws. The night deepened, and the bamboo forest ahead swayed, though there was no wind. Eyes like pale embers glinted between the stalks. A low growl carried across the clearing, followed by a voice that was both calm and filled with menace, asking why a man from across the seas dared walk into the lair of a fallen master. Ragnar raised his chin, his braided hair catching the silver light. He spoke of glory, of fate, of the need to measure a man not by where he comes from, but by the strength of his heart and the deeds of his hands. Tai Lung emerged, his fur rippling like storm clouds, muscles coiled with the grace of a predator and the discipline of 1,000 scrolls of kung fu. His eyes were pools of cold fire, yet beneath them, Ragnar sensed a hunger, a wound that never healed. They circled each other, steel against claw, frost against fang. The first clash was sudden, a blur of motion, Ragnar swinging his axe in a wide arc, while Tai Lung leapt aside with impossible speed, the blade cutting only air and sparks from a stone. The ground trembled as Tai Lung struck, his fist like thunder against Ragnar's shield, splintering its rim. The Viking staggered, yet held his ground, roaring a battle cry that had sent many foes running, but the leopard only bared his fangs in something like a smile. They fought through the night, the forest bending to their fury, bamboo snapping like bones, the moon sliding across the sky as if hurrying to watch their duel. Ragnar was a warrior of storms, used to the crush of shields and the chaos of raids. Yet here, he faced an enemy whose every movement was a poem of destruction, every kick a blade of wind. But the son of Lothbrok was no stranger to despair. He adapted. He learned the rhythm of the beast, his axe finding new paths, his boots planting like roots when the snow leopard tried to sweep him down. Hours passed, and neither yielded. Tai Lung spoke between strikes of the futility of honor, of the weakness of men who chained themselves to fate. Ragnar answered with the tales of Odin's tests, of how even the gods respected those who carved their own saga upon the world. At last the sky began to pale, and the mists rose higher, curling like ghosts around their feet. They were both bleeding, both breathing hard, their strength near its end. Tai Lung, with a roar that cracked the stones, launched his final assault, a spinning tempest of claws and fury meant to shatter Ragnar like dry wood. The Viking met it with a desperate surge, his axe not swung but thrust, catching the beast's momentum and turning it aside. They fell together, rolled across the cold earth, and when the dust settled, Ragnar's knee was on Tai Lung's chest, his blade pressed to the fur at his throat. Yet he did not strike. The scroll of power lay behind them, untouched, glowing faintly, as if waiting to see what choice would be made. Ragnar looked into the eyes of his enemy and saw not just the monster the villagers feared, but the shadow of a pupil betrayed, a warrior cast aside. He spoke then, not with the voice of a conqueror, but with the voice of a man who had lost and learned and risen again, offering the snow leopard a path not of chains, but of redemption. Tai Lung did not answer at once. His chest heaved, his claws flexed. The dawn painted his stripes in red and gold. Then slowly he pushed the axe away. The valley was silent except for the distant cry of a crane. In that silence, something changed. Not victory, not defeat, but a truce born of exhaustion and strange respect. Ragnar rose, leaving the scroll where it lay, for some powers were not meant to be claimed by force. He walked back through the bamboo, his steps heavy, yet steady, knowing that the saga of this night would follow him across the seas. Tai Lung watched him go, the first rays of sun touching his scarred fur, and for the first time in many winters, he felt the weight of his rage loosen, if only by a thread. And so the valley held its breath, the mountains keeping their secrets, the mist curling back to the river, while two warriors parted without chains, their battle now a story whispered to the wind that carries dreams. The winter winds howled like wolves that had forgotten the taste of warmth, carrying with them whispers of an ancient monastery perched upon the spine of the world, where snow fell without end, and the bells of forgotten monks told only in the dreams of those destined to die there. Months had passed since Ragnar Lothbrok spared the life of the snow leopard Tai Lung in the misted valley, walking away with a warrior's respect and leaving behind a truce as fragile as ice upon a river at spring's edge. He returned to his longship, crossed seas blacker than the memory of betrayal, raided and ruled and feasted. Yet at night he would wake with his hand gripping an axe that was not there, hearing in the dark the echo of claws against stone. Far to the east, Tai Lung wandered the fractured mountains, his spirit restless, his strength unspent, the villagers' fear of his name growing quieter with each step he took away from their lands. But within his chest the furnace of ambition still burned, and in the coldest hours he dreamed of the scroll he had once coveted, the scroll Ragnar had left untouched, and of the man who had denied him both victory and defeat. Word reached them both of the monastery of Kunlun Frost, said to hold the key to the Gate of Thousand Echoes, where warriors could either cleanse their souls or burn them to ash trying. Ragnar heard it from a Chinese trader, whose eyes flicked like those of a man who knew he carried a curse upon his tongue. Tai Lung learned it from an old blind crane, who spoke of redemption wrapped in blizzards. So the fates wove their threads again, pulling the Viking from the mead halls of the north and the snow leopard from his haunted valleys, leading them along separate roads that would coil together like twin serpents in the snow. The climb to the monastery was a trial of its own. Ragnar braved avalanches and the ghosts of the mountain who spoke in the voices of drowned sailors. His beard froze, his fingers cracked, but he pressed on. For in the howling of the wind, he began to hear a challenge not yet answered. Tai Lung moved like a shadow across the cliffs, his paws barely disturbing the frost. But with each step the chi of the mountain pressed upon him, dredging memories of chains and betrayal, of the master who had cast him aside, and the destiny that had slipped through his claws. Nights passed when the auroras danced above them, green and crimson curtains of the gods and the dragons, and both men, beast and man alike, felt the pull of something greater than vengeance, a reckoning that could not be outrun. When at last the monastery rose before them, its gates carved with runes older than Midgard, and prayers written in a language of the first monks, the sky was iron, the snow like glass shards. The bells rang, though no hands moved them. Ragnar entered from the western pass, Tai Lung from the eastern cliffs, their paths crossing in the frozen courtyard, where the statues of forgotten sages stared with hollow eyes. No words were spoken at first, only the hiss of wind between pillars. Then Tai Lung's voice, cold as the peaks, asked why the Viking had come where even spirits feared to linger. Ragnar answered that he had come to finish what the mists had begun, to test not the strength of flesh, but the truth of fate, to see if the shadowed warrior before him had grown or simply hidden his hunger beneath the snow. Tai Lung bared his fangs in a grim smile, saying the mountain demanded a price, and it would take it in blood. They circled, their breaths steaming, the runes beneath their feet glowing faintly, as if recognizing the duel to come. The first strike was not of steel, but of will. Tai Lung thrust his chi outward, a ripple that bent the air, sending shards of ice spinning like daggers. Ragnar planted his boots, raised his axe, and the ancient iron in its blade drank the force like mead, cracking the frost beneath him but holding firm. Snow swirled into a storm as their battle began, claws against iron, roars against silence, the monastery walls trembling as if the spirits within remembered war. Tai Lung moved like a tempest, his strikes blurring into a dance of white and gray, each kick trailing frostfire. Ragnar answered with the ferocity of the north, his axe whistling arcs that carved the air, his shield long lost to splinters, but his grip unbroken. Hours became moments, moments stretched into eternities. They fought in the halls where monks once prayed, on the bridges that spanned abysses with no bottom, upon the roof where the stars watched like cold witnesses. Tai Lung's chi flared, wrapping him in the semblance of a spectral dragon, each roar shaking the icicles from the beams. Ragnar called upon the runes etched in his flesh, gifts of seers who had warned him this path led only to twilight, and his axe gleamed with the memory of storms. Blow for blow, neither yielded. Between the strikes they spoke, not of peace, not of mercy, but of what they had become. Tai Lung, a creature who sought redemption, yet feared it would unmake him. Ragnar, a man who had tasted glory and found it hollow, without a worthy foe to mark its edge. The mountain listened, the wind keened like a mourning widow. At last, upon the highest terrace where the world curved beneath them and the auroras writhed like wounded serpents, they faced each other, blood freezing on their skin and fur, breath shallow, eyes burning with the last coals of defiance. Tai Lung gathered his chi into one final storm, a maelstrom of shadow and snow that promised to tear flesh from bone and soul from body. Ragnar raised his axe, whispered the name of Odin, not as prayer, but as challenge, and leapt into the heart of the tempest. The impact split the terrace, sent stone cascading into the void. For a heartbeat the world went white, soundless. When the light faded, both lay upon the broken platform, the monastery bells ringing madly, as if mourning the price just paid. Tai Lung's chest rose once, twice, then stilled, his eyes finally calm, the ghost of the dragon leaving his breath. Ragnar knelt beside him, his own lifeblood spilling like mead on the snow, and laughed once, a rough, tired sound that turned to a cough. "A good death," he whispered, though no one heard but the mountain. As dawn broke, their bodies were covered by the first true snow of spring, and the gates of Kunlun frost closed again, sealing the story within its stones. The monks' statues wept icicles, the wind carried their names down to the valleys, and in the lands of men and beasts a legend was born, of a Viking and a snow leopard who fought not for treasure, nor for crowns, but for the echo that every warrior seeks, to meet a rival worthy enough that even in death the saga lives.